I would say it's cool, Jackson, if you wanted to play another song. Go ahead and give us one more.
Sure. I mean,
Just as we're having people come in.
uh,
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for being here. My name is Josh Forsyth. I am the drama teacher at Franklin High School and your host for tonight. We're going to be, people are going to be joining, and there might be people joining right now. And so just happy that you guys are here. I just want to thank you for attending. This is our 5th annual storytelling stories, a fast story slam event. It's hosted by the theater department and the FHS library. And just happy to have you guys be with us for an event that brings the community together to tell stories. That's what tonight is about. And this is an experience that all of us have in different ways, whether it's sitting around the dinner table and telling stories to each other over a meal, or calling a friend on the telephone and catching up in that way, or in this new way, which is over Zoom. It's what brings people together. So tonight we have 7 storytellers for you that you're going to hear from. 7 storytellers, 4 students and 3 staff, who are going to be telling a 5-minute true story from their life. And tonight the theme is borders. And I'm going to introduce them here in a second, and we'll get going on the storytelling. But before we do that, I need to break down a little bit about how this works in terms of how the show is going to happen. So the storytellers that are going to be telling stories tonight participated in a storytelling workshop that we conducted the week before the fall break. So each of the storytellers went through a workshop, and the storytellers, when they're going through the workshop, learn how to craft a story that has to be 5 minutes long. And it has to be true. It has to be a true story from their life. So this is not something that is invented. It's actually something that they went through. And normally, in previous years, this is our 5th year, there is a panel of judges that score it similar to how you might see something scored in the Olympics. There's a rating scale from 1 to 10 in various categories that the judges score the storytellers. And then at the end of that, the judges, by scoring it, there's a winner that's chosen to be the representative from Franklin to go to what's called the Truth Be Told Story Slam, which is a district-wide, Portland Public Schools district-wide event that happens, I believe it's in February. I'm not sure when it's happening this year. But because this is a new way of doing things, we weren't really sure how it was going to go. And so we made the decision that we weren't going to have judges. So instead, me, Miss Sunny Childs, and Ann Frazee, who are the co-hosts or helped run this event, are going to be making the determination at the end of tonight's stories. Oh, sorry, it's right here. I have it right in front of me. It's February 25th is when the Truth Be Told event is going to happen. So this is a challenging way to perform because there's not a live audience. So we're essentially talking to our computers. But if you want to share, right, things with us, you can. There will be a way for you to send nice messages for the storytellers so that they can hear your virtual claps and give praise. As you were coming in tonight and as you joined the event this evening, you heard music from a piano player named Jackson Grace. So if you can, even though we can't hear you, but it'll send out to us, if you could give Jackson a round of applause, maybe give some snaps or some claps, that would be awesome. And thank you again, Jackson, for playing. It was really great to hear you. So here are the storytellers that we have tonight in the order that you're going to hear them. First up, we're going to have Shayla Santa Cruz Krigbaum, then Lily Rudine, then Allison Sutherland, and then Sunny Childs, then Alana Anderson, and then myself, and then Pam Garrett. Each of the storytellers were asked the question before tonight about what superpower they would want if they were granted a superpower. What would their superpower be? And our first storyteller, Shayla, is a junior, and what Shayla said was that they would want to be able to shapeshift so that they can turn into different things to blend into certain situations. So without further ado, please give it up for Shayla.
As a young teenager, I always wanted to be different from others. I always wanted to be walking around, whether it be at school or on the streets, and have people stop and stare and think, what the hell is that? But the thing is, I never really tackled that goal on my own because making decisions and liking things for myself was way out of my comfort zone. And usually I would find someone who was really unique looking to me, and I would just blindly turn myself into a carbon copy of them because I thought they were really cool, and I wanted them to notice me. And that got me in some really unknowingly sticky situations. So let me take you back to 6th grade Shayla. I did not look like this. I wore really bright colors. I had like sassy t-shirts that said like, oh, don't talk to me, I'm cooler than you. I would wear like a lot of floral print, and I like listened to whatever came on the radio, and I was really bubbly and I had a lot of friends. And then I met this guy, and he was the complete opposite of what I was. He wore all black every day. He didn't really have a lot of friends. He tended to keep his circle small. He was pretty shy, and he was a metalhead. And for some reason, I was really drawn to that. And I wanted to be his friend. So we became friends, and then we dated, and then we broke up. And I was so devastated that I would text him and be all like, can we at least be friends? And he would just not budge. And I was so determined, so I did the next best thing. Why not just get in the metal? He would like that, right? So I knew nothing about metal. So I would just look at his t-shirts, write down the band name, look it up at home, and then listen to it. And the first band that I got into was Slayer, which is like thrash metal, really fast-paced, loud guitar, metal stuff. And I remember listening to it, and I was like, this is not what I would listen to because it was all devilish. It talked about hell and gore and all this stuff. And then I was like, I think I like this. So after that, I got into like the stuff that everyone likes, like Black Sabbath, Metallica, surface stuff. And then the more I blindly followed this guy's t-shirts, the more extreme metal I listened to. Like, for example, I started listening to black metal, which sounds like TV static. And then I dabbled in a little bit of gore grind, which sounds like pig noises, like literal pigs. And then if death metal wasn't enough, get this, slamming brutal death metal. So I continued to tolerate that. And then I started buying band shirts from Hot Topic, showing them off, taking selfies, posting on Instagram with me in it. And then I started collecting records. I'll go to the record store, buy whatever makes me look brutal, listen to it, and then throw it in the back of the collection and not touch it ever again because I didn't really like it. I continued to do this for about 2 years, most of middle school. And then fast forward to now, I'm a junior. And him and we've separated in freshman year. And I figured it was like I couldn't like follow him anymore. It wasn't worth it. And I've been out of my metalhead phase for a while. And I remember one night I was looking at my record collection and I find this one record and I say to myself, there is always something very fishy about this record. So I do some looking and I remember the guy who made the project, it was like a black metal project. In his old band, he got arrested for 15 years because he stabbed his band members to death and he set some things on fire that shouldn't have been set on fire. And then I remember he had a YouTube channel. And I remember this guy telling me to like, oh, check out this YouTube channel. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then I would just skim through the videos. I had no idea what the hell this guy was talking about. And when I did more digging, I found out that his YouTube channel got taken down for harmful conspiracy and hate speech. Wow. So I go down to my parents and I say to them, hey, there's some records I want to get rid of. And then my parents say, whoa, what are you talking about? You're not going to get rid of any of your records. I'm like, no, you don't understand. And then right before I can say the next thing, my mom says, oh, you mean those records that go, ah! And then I say, yeah, those records. So they agree to look through them. I bring down a couple of records, and then I get the courage to say my actual true reason. And I say, also, some of these records were not made by good people, and I don't want hate in my record collection. So, and then I also said, I also never really was into this. And then my dad says to me, so you were a follower, huh? And then I look down, I'm like, yeah, I was. So my dad puts the records up on OfferUp. I go back to my room, sit on my bed, and then I begin to reflect on what my dad said. He was right. I was a follower. I never did anything for myself. And being a junior in high school now, even though I want to slap middle school me very hard across the face for what she would do, I also want to give her a really big fat hug and tell her that everything will be fine and dandy in the end. And then one day she will come out of her comfortable, warm shell and then use these experiences as tools to find out who she really is, a leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Shayla, for sharing your story. Lots of people are clapping for you. Thank you for sharing your story. Next up, we have Lily, who is a junior. And when Lily was asked what their superpower would be, Lily said that they would like the power to heal. And so without further ado, take it away, Lily.
Middle school was really rough for me. When I was in the 7th grade, I had fallen into a depression and this constant cycle of self-loathing. I pushed everyone around me away, especially those who were only ever trying to help. I started ditching class, and as I walked out the door, my grades went with it. I only talked about it with 2 of my very close friends that I had known since I was in kindergarten. But there wasn't much that they could do to help me. By the time I was in 8th grade, I finally decided that I wanted to feel better. So I looked for help from those who were willing to listen to me, who were able to give the time to help me with my schoolwork and just made me feel better in a way that I didn't think was possible at the time. By the end of the year, not only had I felt a lot better, but I had gotten straight A's. I got to make a speech at my 8th grade promotion, and I had made so many more friends along the way. I had really started to feel better until the summer before high school. I was going to a school where I wasn't going to know many people, and that was scary. But once my mom had gotten me my first phone number, I contacted my 2 close friends right away. But at first they didn't respond. I didn't think anything of it at the time. But they did respond when me, my mom, and my brother went out to eat dinner at Olive Garden. They told me how much they hated and wanted absolutely nothing to do with me. They went on and on about how I wasn't the same person that I used to be. And in a way, that was true, for the better, of course. But at the time, I burst into tears in the middle of this sea of people at Olive Garden, making everyone around us feel so incredibly awkward and uncomfortable. But I didn't care. And my mom was there and she didn't care either. She only cared about me, which made it just a little bit more bearable. After a month of going through the stages of grief, like anyone would, I remembered back to when I told my friends about my depression. I remembered how, on a daily basis, they would make jokes and poke fun at me and act like it was such a trend, when in reality, it was something that degraded my self-worth until I had contemplated ending my life. And they knew this. I remembered how they were one of the reasons that I kept digging this hole that I already hated being in to begin with. And once I had separated myself from them in the 8th grade, I was actually able to feel better. I decided that I didn't want to take those kinds of relationships with me going into high school. So I didn't. And I have never felt so much better because of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily, for sharing your story. Up next, we have our third storyteller, who's Allison, a freshman. And when Allison was asked their superpower, this is what they said. They would like the ability to negotiate any price down to $5 or less. So if, for example, they wanted to convince a realtor to sell them Buckingham Palace for $375 or tickets to France for $4.95. So without further ado, take it away, Allison.
So I've wished for the demise of more Republicans in the last 4 years than the number of hairs growing from Chuck Grassley's ears. Like a lot of Democrats, I'm just not really privy to the idea of uniting with the far right, and I haven't been for a pretty long time. To me, it'd be like if an antelope tried to compromise with the alligator that just tore its legs off. I just didn't feel that engaging with modern conservatives was really the right move for me. I felt like it was going against all the hatred I felt while watching the news every single day for the past 4 years. So, cut to me and my mom walking downtown about month 7 of the pandemic. We had just passed Pioneer Square and this group of evangelicals yelling about this whole COVID hoax when an unkempt-looking woman walked up to us. She might have been homeless, and telling by the scabs on her face, she was probably also a drug addict, but these are educated guesses. And as she came closer, it was clear she wasn't the kind of person that was going to ask pretty please for $1. She's the kind of person you see downtown and think, poor thing, and also, let's cross the street, if you know what I mean. And she wasn't 2 inches from my face when she said, give me your, and before she could finish, as anyone would assume, I thought I was being robbed. I thought I was going to leave that conversation about my phone or my wallet. But then she finished her sentence and she said, give me your goddamn mask. My mask? It didn't make any sense. And then the next sentence sort of made things clear. Those things are evil, she said. And I always try to make sure I mention the part because it's pretty funny at the time, but it was also a very terrifying moment for me. And so this woman had my mom and I blocked on this corner for like 5 to 7 minutes, yelling at us, screaming at us, demanding that we remove our masks, which we were not prepared to do. And all we could do was hope that some witness would show up and help us through this, whatever the hell this was. I mean, the block was seemingly abandoned. It was like no witnesses were in sight for this in Portland. It's crazy. And from this terrifying experience, 2 things really stick with me. One being, at one point she said, as far as I'm concerned, your name is Heather. Heather? Who's Heather? I mean, is she a fan of the movie? And I kind of realized that maybe Heather is her equivalent of a Karen, and she probably saw me as some whiny, uptight Karen, which is probably the consensus for most Republicans regarding Democrats. And I didn't want to be labeled like that. What in me represented that? And the other thing that I remember was her hatred towards my mom and I. She'd only known us for a few minutes, but she already hated us, and it didn't make any sense to me. For what, wearing a mask? But I realized that I do a similar thing to Republicans on a daily basis. Every time I see someone going down the street with a MAGA bumper sticker, I immediately despise them, and it's not really fair. My mom and I would go on to tell this story many times to many people, and we were always the victim. But if I was the victim, then who was the culprit? The obvious answer might be the woman, and you might be right. But I don't really think it was her. I don't even think it was the raving conspiracy theorist on Facebook who probably put that idea into her head in the first place and made her act out in the way that she did. I think a lot of progressives have been colored cynical to the word unity, especially when it applies to political parties. We have this phrase, when they go low, we go high, slapped onto our rear windshields, but we can't seem to remember the last time it's actually gotten us anywhere. But I've seen the last 4 years of polarization. I've seen it on the news, and I've seen it in person in countless protests, and it is the least progressive policy. So maybe I can't talk to my Aunt Robin about socialized medicine, and I can't get behind giving toddlers firearms, but I can still have a nice conversation with my relatives. Republicans should be able to talk to Democrats and vice versa. That's what democracy was based on, compromise, and I think we need to keep up that tradition. And in order to do that, I think we have to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and find common grounds, because in order to make a real change, you can never underestimate the value of pennies.
Thank you very much, Allison, for sharing your story. And again, please, even though we can't hear you, literally, we can hear you. We can hear you through the Zoom. Through the Zoom, we'll hear your clapping. So thank you for sharing your story. And next up, our fourth storyteller is Miss Sunny Childs, our recently retired librarian from Franklin High School. And when Sunny was asked what they would want as a superpower, Sunny said they would like the ability to teleport so that they could see their stepmom in Hawaii. And without further ado, take it away, Sunny.
Hi there, it's really nice to see everybody, even if it's virtually. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you about my story. So the year I turned 14 was my crossing over year. It was the year Randy Beers, my childhood friend died of leukemia, and I saw death close up for the first time. And it was the year of a couple of other crossing overs, one moral and one geographic. And I'm going to tell you about them now in what I like to call my running away story. So I lived on this perfect block in this perfect neighborhood. There were even sidewalks and clean streets and beautiful trees, and the kids played kickball in the street. We played Batman and Robin, and everything was perfect except for my house. My house was the one with the overgrown lawn and the broken swing set and the peeling paint and the barking dog and the police that would come almost every weekend because my mother and stepfather would be fighting. I lived in this house with my mother, who was a wild drunk and a compulsive liar, and my stepdad, who was a violent sociopath. So things on that perfect block were not so perfect for me, but at least I had the block. The first time I ran away, I was 5 years old, and I made it all the way to the mailbox on the corner. I'm not sure what happened that day to make me want to run, or why I thought the corner mailbox would be a good place to hide. Eventually, I got bored and came home, and I didn't run away for a long time after that. And I want to fast forward to when I was 13, because that was the point at which my mom had to sell our house in that perfect neighborhood that was my sanctuary to pay off my stepdad's debts. And we ended up in this tiny apartment at the edge of town. It was me, my mom, my 17-year-old sister, and my stepdad. Now, my sister at 17 made a decision right away, and that was to move in with my dad. And even though she left the school boundaries, she got to go to stay at our school because it was her senior year, and they gave that grace. I, on the other hand, decided to stay with my mom, and I did that for a few different reasons. The first one was I felt like somebody needed to take care of her, and that was my job, and that was messed up thinking, but that's what I was thinking at the time. Secondly, and probably the most difficult part, was that no one asked me. No one suggested it. No one said, why don't you go too? And I was afraid if I asked and someone said no, that would be a rejection I couldn't stand. So I stayed. And then the last reason was the really practical one. If I moved in with my dad, I would be outside the school boundaries. And I needed to stay at my school. I needed to stay with my friends. They were my safety. So I stuck it out. And actually, only a few months later, my mom got up the courage and she left my stepdad, which took a lot. And we moved into a tinier apartment, just her and me, closer into town. And I got up the courage at that point to say, if I ever see you with him again, my stepdad, I'm out of here. And I had that courage to draw that bright line, which saved me, I think. Because it was only a few months into living in that tiny apartment, and my mom was heading out to the bars at 10 o'clock with her new boyfriend, John. That's how she rolled. She ended up with 5 husbands. Anyway, she and John headed out the door about 10 o'clock. And at 2 in the morning, when she came back, I heard her voice, but it wasn't John she was talking to. It was Jerry, my stepdad. And at that point, I made a plan. I got up quietly and I packed my big trunk that had been sitting around for camp, and I put all my clothes in it, and I waited till morning. In the morning, I tiptoed to my mom's room and I opened the door just to make sure. And yep, sure enough, sprawled right next to her on the bed was Jerry. His creepy toupee was on the nightstand next to him. For those of you who don't know, that's a little hair piece that men who don't want to look bald put on their heads. And it was sitting right there. And underneath the bed were his ugly white tasseled shoes. And on the dresser was that outdated leisure suit. And I closed the door and backed away, and I headed off to school. Now, the junior high and high school were right next to one another. And so as a junior high student, I crossed over to the high school side to look for my sister. And I found her friends. And I said, tell Tracy to wait for me after school. I am going home with her. And their eyes got pretty big because they knew that Tracy and I didn't get along and she wasn't going to be happy about. Thankfully, my sister didn't keep her feelings from taking me home. She got the trunk, we got the trunk, and we headed off to my dad's. And as we're driving to my dad's, I realized, oh shoot, I have got a problem to solve, and I've got to solve it right now because I want to be at my dad's, but I also need to stay at my school. And by the time we got to my dad's, I had a plan. We called a friend who was willing to offer up her address. We got a utility bill. We whited out our address. We typed in, there were typewriters then, we typed in the new address of our friend, and then we copied it several times so we couldn't see we had been playing with it. And we submitted that as a change of address, and the school for 4 years never realized I was outside their boundaries, thank goodness. And while I was in high school, enjoying my friends and enjoying the safety of my dad's home, there was occasionally a time when I said, I kicked myself. Why didn't I do this sooner? It was so easy. I just had to get up and go. But I also forgave myself because I realized that it isn't always, easy to recognize that sometimes there is such a thing as a good lie. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny, for sharing your story. Next up, we have Alana, who is a senior. And when Alana was asked what their superpower would be, Alana said that they would like be given the ability to move objects like they do with the Force in Star Wars, because they're a huge Star Wars fan and they think it would be awesome. Yes, it would be awesome. So Alana recently got a concussion. So instead of Alana telling the story live, Alana made a recording of their story as a way to avoid more screen time with light. So we're going to play the recording of Alana's story.
I'm very shy, and I also like girls, which makes it very hard because, number one, girls are very hard to talk to, and number two, they're extremely intimidating. It feels like there's a glass wall between me and meeting new girls. I can see them, they can see me, but we can't quite get to each other. Whenever I try to talk to a girl I think is pretty or cute, I either stumble my words, get super anxious, or just head towards the nearest exit. So it's junior year. I'm feeling pretty good, but I really want to meet a new girl or talk to, the girl I like. I'm an open book, I'm ready to get out there and break that glass wall that I have in front of me a little bit. So one day I'm walking in the stairs in the cafeteria and the sun is shining through. It's a beautiful day out and I see this girl at the bottom of the stairs. She has brown eyes and blonde hair, and she's really pretty, and she smiles in my direction. My first thought is, she's smiling at me? So I look behind me. There's no one there. So I think she's smiling at me. So I smile back. I walk down the stairs. She goes out the side door. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. She smiled at me. From my gaydar sense, I'm pretty sure she's into girls. So I'm like, okay, maybe I could talk to this girl. I'll see her around and I'll say hi. But first, I need a game plan. So I asked my brother for advice. The first thing he tells me is never say coolio. I tend to say that a lot. He's very strict about this. He mentions that it's very uncool. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. The second thing he says is never use the phrase awesome sauce. Okay, easy. Got it. And he goes on and on about how I have to just go with the flow, just talk to the girl, don't think, and just do. So in the next couple of days, I see this girl, and she's eating lunch with her friends. And I'm like, okay, this is my opportunity. I can go say hi to this girl. So I'm like, okay, I got this. I have my brother's advice in my head, don't say uncool words, all of that. I'm kind of second guessing his advice because I'm not as outgoing as him. We're very different. Maybe I shouldn't do this, but He's my brother. I love him. I'm going to listen to his advice. I'm going to do this. So I'm getting ready to talk to this girl. My phone. I start sliding through my fake Instagram posts. I don't have Instagram, but fake it till you make it. So I'm very fakely scrolling. I'm sliding over to make eye contact and talk to this girl. And I'm just about to make eye contact, almost there, and the bell rings. And I was like, oh, damn it. Ring, ring, ring. And I'm like, oh, damn it. My phone falls. I'm a mess. The hallways are erupting with people. She was sitting right above the entry hallway at Franklin, so we all know that people are coming in, people are opening the doors to the classrooms. It's loud, kids are running. It's a mess. I'm cursing myself as I'm walking down the hallway. Damn it, every step I take. I'm like, oh man. But suddenly, I get this burst of confidence. I'm like, you know what? Screw shyness. This is stupid. I'm going to go say hi to her if it's the last thing I do. So I turn around and I'm about to go up and catch up to her and say hi somehow, one way or another. I end up checking out. I never did talk to that girl. But I did talk to a girl I liked. And I did break that glass wall a little bit. And as the pandemic hit, that glass wall literally got put back up. And it really made me realize that I need to start getting myself out there. I need to start talking to people. I need to start not being afraid to talk to girls, not being afraid to put myself out there. I'm going to college next year. I'm going to go, see if they have a Story Slam platform at the college. I'm going to go to parties. I'm going to just break that glass wall more and more, because I've learned that it's not worth hiding behind a glass wall, or in my case, being stuck behind a glass wall anymore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alana, for sharing your story. It was apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but we restarted it and we got to hear it, and it was wonderful. So thank you for sharing. Up next is me. I'm going to share my story. So what's my superpower? My superpower, if I was given a superpower, I always change it. I'm always changing it, thinking, what do I want? But I think the one that I always come back to, because I think it would just be awesome, is the ability to breathe underwater, right? It would just be super cool. Because it's just a big area, the ocean, and I could go, to the whole thing, and it would be awesome. About 3 years ago, the Portland Trail Blazers saved my garden shed. So I had recently moved into my house about 3 years ago. And when I was moving in and when I was buying the house, in the backyard, there was there is a large tree that is in my neighbor's yard. So when you go into the backyard, you can see this tree. And it was kind of odd looking. It looked sort of like a Dr. Seuss tree. It was kind of strange, just kind of the way it was sticking out above the garden shed. And fast forward, I had some friends over to watch the Blazer game. The Blazers were in the playoffs. I can't remember who they were playing, but I had two friends over to watch the game. And a few days before, it must have been it was like a few days or a week before the game, there was this windstorm that was coming through, this big windstorm that was being announced. So there's going to be a windstorm, and be ready for it. So I didn't really think much of it, in terms of the windstorm. So the windstorm happened, it went through. Again, fast forward back to the Blazer game. My friends were over, we're enjoying the game. And it's my friend Brian and my friend Jeff. And Brian had already been over to my house. He'd seen it. He'd been there a few times. And my friend Jeff had never been over. So during the halftime of the game, I was doing hosty things, getting food ready. And my friend Brian took Jeff out to the backyard, and they were kind of looking around. And then just after a few moments of being out there, they come rushing back in, and they're like, dude, you've got to go look at your neighbor's tree. Like, have you seen what's going on with your neighbor's tree? And I was like, no, I'm a fairly shy person. I know that may seem strange. I'm the drama teacher, but I'm actually very shy. By nature, I don't really feel like, I'm like, I have to build up courage in order to kind of do that. So I never looked. I never peeked over and looked at my neighbor's yard because that was their yard. And so I didn't do that. So I go out there, and he's like, takes me around, and I finally look. I kind of peek over the fence, and I notice that this tree is basically not a tree. Like, there's no tree really. It's just kind of hollow on one side. And it's like amazing. It's amazing that this tree has not fallen over, but it's clear that it's going to, right? Like, it's going to fall over onto my garden shed. So my friend Brian's a very assertive person, and he's like, you need to go talk to your neighbor right now. And I was like, no, I don't need to do that. And he's like, no, you should go over and talk to her. You need to go over and talk to them and let them know. And I was like, no, I'm good. We can wait until after the game. It's fine. I don't need to do that. And he's like, well, I'll go talk to her. I was like, no, you don't need to talk to her. I'll take care of it. I'll do it tomorrow. And so the game happens, they go home, and the next day I decide, okay, I know that I need to do this, but because I'm shy, I decide, okay, the best thing I can do is I'll write my neighbor a letter, right? I'll write them a letter. And I go through and I go onto Google, and I'm like, look up their address, right? I actually did that. I was like, well, if they're the house behind, I'll find out what their address is, and I'll mail it to them. That's a good way of doing it. And then I realized that's silly. I can't mail a letter to my neighbor that lives on the other thing. So I finally built up the courage, and I'm like, okay, I'll just walk it over. I'll put it in their mailbox, and then they'll see it. And then I'll leave my phone number, and then they'll call me if they have, any questions about the tree. So I walk around, I go over to my neighbor's house. I'm walking up, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go up. And right when I get up to the mailbox to put it in, I hear a dog bark, and then I panic. I'm like, oh no, they've, so I try to leave, right? Like, I'm like, no, I gotta go. And then before I can leave, though, they come to the door, and they're like, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, you can help me. I'm your neighbor from I moved in a few months ago. Did you know your tree is gonna fall over? It's like not basically a tree anymore. And so to my surprise, they're like, yeah, I saw that. I wasn't really sure what to do. I have a friend that might come over and help. And I was like, okay, well, I just wanted you to know, and so here's my phone number. Here's this note that I wrote to you with my phone number on it. And then I kind of I didn't talk for very long. And then I left, right? So amazingly though, the next day I'm doing stuff, I'm hanging out, and there's this loud sound, right? There's this loud sound, and lo and behold, tree falls over onto my garden shed. It was like this, but it didn't completely destroy it. It just fell over on it, right? So I call up my insurance, and I do, and they tell me, they're like, well, if it, there's nothing we can do. It's considered an act of God. It's just something that happened. It's actually not something that's covered. And I said, well, I went over and I talked to my neighbor, and I told them about it. He's like, wait, hold on a second. You talked to your neighbor? And I was like, yeah, I talked to them. And they're like, well, you're in luck because you talked to them. Now it's their responsibility. So this one time, at least for me, it literally paid for me to be a Blazers fan. Thank you for listening to my story. Last but not least, we have our seventh storyteller tonight, who is Pam Garrett. And Pam, when asked what their superpower would be, Pam wants the ability to not only be immune from COVID, but also make everybody that is around Pam, anybody that's around Pam would also be immune from COVID. So without further ado, Pam, take it away.
There we go. Ready to hear me? Hey there. I'm glad you all came tonight. It almost feels like a normal Friday night, right? So I want to tell you a story about my first break with organized religion. Actually, it wasn't a break. It was a hairline fracture. I was only 10, but we had just moved from the suburbs in Alabama way out to the country. This was in 1973. And when we arrived, it was summer. The only thing on TV at the time, on the 3 channels that we had, was the Watergate trials. So there was no one around. The nearest neighbor was a quarter of a mile away. So it was really hard to make friends. Of course, I had my dog Blackie, and he was my best buddy. But my mom was religious. Most people in the South are. And so she made sure that she found us a church. She found a Methodist church for us. We were Methodist. I used to joke that everybody in the South was born either Methodist or Baptist. We were Methodist. We got to dance. So after she found us that church, we started going. We went every Sunday morning to Hayden United Methodist Church and every Sunday night. And Sunday nights, they had a group that was called MYF, Methodist Youth Fellowship. And so I met some other kids. Some were my age, some a little younger, some a little older. But one of the girls in the group, Dawn Russell, she gave me a comic book one time. She said, "Here, you want to see this?" And I was like, "Sure." And it was Archie. Now, this is not your Riverdale dark Archie of today. It was just an Archie comic book, I thought. And Archie comic books were like, you know, about teenagers, very wholesome. They talked about teenager-y things. And so I thought it would be really cool. But this was a different kind of Archie comic book. This was a Christian Archie comic book. So they talked about heaven and hell and being good and all that kind of stuff. And one time in the comic book, Jughead was there, and he was there with his dog, Hot Dog. And he mentioned something about Hot Dog going to heaven. And Archie was like, "Oh no, Jughead, Hot Dog can't go to heaven. Dogs can't go to heaven. Animals don't have spirits, so they can't go to heaven." Well, wait a minute. I knew there was something that was not right about that. And I thought about it a lot, but I went on to church every Sunday, and I kept up the going and doing what I was expected to do. But that moment, that break had begun. And at 16, I got to get out of those regular Sunday morning church visits because I got a job at Burger King, and the only thing more important in the South than going to church on Sunday was work. So I got excused from Sunday mornings, and the break was even further and further. I went off to college. I went off to work. I forgot about Sunday morning church. I moved to the West Coast at 25, and the break widened. Although I did find a Methodist church in San Francisco, but it wasn't a typical Methodist church. It was Glide, and it was big, and they called their Sunday things celebrations, and they even were marrying people that were gay before gay marriage was legal. So I thought that was a great place. But then I moved to Portland, and I looked around a little. I at once decided maybe Buddhism would be good, or Baha'i. I even dabbled in witchcraft a little bit. But, then I decided it was the rules that I didn't like. And I let love be my rule. That was what I wanted. And that 10-year-old girl didn't know that a few years later a movie would come out that would be called All Dogs Go to Heaven. And I know they do.
Thank you very much, Pam. Thank you for sharing your story. So I want to mention a couple things before we go off and deliberate here. Just things that are happening. I just wanted to make sure that people heard about these. One is an event that's going to be happening at the end of February. The theater department is gearing up to produce a play called She Kills Monsters, which will be brought to you virtually. So be looking for that. We'll have more information. We're going into auditions next week on Monday and Tuesday. The second thing that I wanted to remind people of is that the Truth Be Told event is on February 25th. And so the person that's chosen from tonight is going to be representing Franklin in that event. And then the last event that I wanted to put in your brain is the Poetry Slam and Verselandia, which are going to be happening in April. And so there'll be more about that here in the future, but be looking for those events. So we're going to go off and we're going to deliberate here. And while we're doing that, please enjoy some more music from Jackson Grace, who's going to play some more songs on the piano for you. to announce tonight's winner and our alternate person for the Truth Be Told Citywide Story Slam, Miss Frazee, who is our new media specialist / librarian, is going to announce the winner and the runner-up. So go ahead, Miss Frazee.
Thank you, Josh. And thanks, everybody. Thanks to all the attendees. Thank you to all our student and adult storytellers. This has just been a super fun, my super fun first event at Franklin High School, and I've just been in awe of the awesomeness. So thank you so much. So thank you, Shayla and Alana and Lily and Allison. I really enjoyed getting to know you over this process. And without further ado, I'd like to announce our winners who will go on to the Truth Be Told Story Slam in February, and also will receive some prizes via email. So please look for those. All of our student participants today will be receiving several fabulous prizes. So thank you to everybody. All right, here we go. With first place is our Allison Sutherland. Thank you so much, Allison. Yay! And in second place, our runner-up is Shayla Santa Cruz Cuibom. Thank you so much. Everybody told wonderful stories, and this was it was honestly the best Story Slam I've been to in 2020. So I'm thrilled. Thank you all so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for everybody for coming tonight. All the participants are going to be, I got an opportunity to get a ticket for the Moth Showcase, which is happening tomorrow night through Literary Arts. And they're all going to be receiving gift certificates to Powell's Books, which is awesome. I believe there's going to be I'm not sure if it's up now, but will be up. If you want to send us an email or praise to the storytellers, thank you for sharing things in the chat. But if you'd like to, we have an email that you can send to Miss Frazee or Miss Childs or myself. Feel free to email us and we will forward those on to the storytellers. I want to take an opportunity again to thank the storytellers for being here tonight and the bravery that it takes to tell a story like this, and to the PTSA for funding our prizes, to Miss Childs, Miss Sunny Childs and Miss Frazee for helping produce this. And I'd also like to thank Miss Frazee for taking care of all the technical aspects of the show tonight. And creating the webinar that you're watching. I'd also like to thank Ms. Pam Garrett for inviting Sunny Childs to their creative writing class and for going through the workshop and continuing this tradition at Franklin, which is really, really wonderful. And I'd like to last but not least, thank everyone for attending tonight, for sharing some time and hearing some stories from some students and staff at Franklin. It's really wonderful to be here with you.
And before we go, I do want to also thank Josh, Mr. Forsythe, for emceeing and being such a great partner. We've been doing this. This is our 5th year, and now it's a trio of us, and it's just a wonderful way to reconnect with everyone and to be able to work with the students and the staff. And I wish I could see all the audience members out there, but I can see your names up there, some staff, some parents, some kiddos. So love to you all. Keep telling stories. That's what connects us.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for the wonderful music, Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Jackson, for playing. Thank you, Jackson. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah.